Howdy out there in the world, and blessings to you all. It is February 19th, 2024. It's already February, if you can't believe it. I can't. The days are just rolling by, it seems like. Anyways, I'm doing this video as an update as far as numbers go. I'm calling this a 9-week update. I think I did an 18-week update after my first 18 weeks, so this will be the next 9 weeks, which spans from 14 December until 14 February. I crunched some numbers just so people out there know if you're looking at this company. And of course, any opinions that I state about this company or any other types of information or anything that I mention are opinions of mine. They do not reflect the company of CR England. If the camera is shaking, I have the truck on high idle right now, trying to get it to warm up. I thought I was going to have a job, but it was actually assigned to a different truck. I actually went on duty to do the trip planning paperwork part of it, which some people will, some people won't. It just depends on how you want to burn your time. Anyways, so I looked at that job, and it was actually for another truck. Contacted dispatch/driver manager, and they removed it. So I'm just sitting here waiting for a job to show up. But because I started my clock, my 14 hours started. And then I found the incorrect information and, like I said, notified dispatch. And so I was able to, I then went back to off-duty time. And then I'm able to go into my hours and actually edit that time that I was on duty. And I changed it back to off-duty time. So my 14-hour clock that had started had basically now reset back to 14 hours, and I'm not losing that time, and my clock theoretically hasn't started because I went in there and edited and modified the time, saying, hey, I was given the wrong information, things like that, so that always our logs department can see that. And also, I guess if level 3 inspection, if they go in there and look at logs, they can see. So back to my 9-week summary, my previous 9 weeks. I've driven 15,742 miles, and for you, those people who are on the good old-fashioned metric system, that's 25,334 kilometers. On average per week in these last 9 weeks has been 1,749 miles. The money comes down to, I've basically taken out the bonus that I get paid, which is the 3 topics I've talked about in previous videos. If you have any late or no late deliveries is one subtopic. Any critical critical events or accidents is the second topic. And then getting your commitments, your daily 5, and your videos in. Sorry, I got my timer going for my truck shutdown timer. So the videos, safety videos, the huddle calls, and the daily commitments, and your daily 5 that you're supposed to do every day. So those are the 3 things that you can get 1 extra penny for each mile, a cent per mile bonus type of thing. So I'd taken that out of the equation because if you're like me and a bad driver, you won't see all 3 cents per mile bonus. So that's just a bonus, as they say. So I'm not including that in the calculations. The only time I'm going to include that is in my actual take-home pay at the end of the week. I've done my 9 weeks, what my check total for 9 weeks, would have been, and then the average. And so that includes the bonus, that includes any reimbursements I've been given, any detention, and that's another thing, is I don't include the detention pay or layover pay or anything like that in my net pay figures. I'm only doing the net pay that's including just driving, basically. So, like I said, any detention, layover, reimbursements, and taxes and medical stuff is also included in that take-home check amount. So, in those 15,700 miles, the pay that I received for those miles is, just for those miles alone, is $7,334.22. And that average is $814.91 a week. Like I said again, that's just driving, not including any reimbursements or detention or layover pay or breakdown pay. Driving hours was 341.35 hours, which averages 37.9 hours a week. And if you were to take that $7,300 of pay, and just for driving hours, it would equate to about $21.49 an hour if you wanted to actually see what your hourly pay would be for just driving hours only. I also did where I calculated and summed up my on-duty not driving and my driving hours, and I came up with another hourly pay. So my on-duty not driving hours was 97.99 hours in that same 9 weeks, which for total hours it came up to 439.34 hours. So you take that 439.34, and that averages at 48.8 hours a week. So the $7,334 divided by the 439 hours, it basically breaks down to, this is on duty not driving and driving time, it would break down to $16.69 an hour. So that's doing your pre-trips, the pre-trip inspection, post-trip inspection, and then if there's any breakdown time that you're on the clock for, fueling time, and that's really it. And then if there's any trip planning time that I've included in there, so any time, any type of, any of the on-duty time that you want to use, and that's how I do it. So that's what that breaks down to. So my take-home pay for those 9 weeks total was $6,838.54. Divide that by 9 and you get an average of $759.84 a week. It's less than $800 a week take home pay. Yeah. So that's some information as far as numbers go, and I did get my 1 penny a mile raise back in January after I hit my 6 months. So I'm at 46 cents a mile now. Anyways, while I was in Laredo earlier this week, I was waiting for a load to come out of there, and I did receive a load from Laredo to Clearfield, Utah. The tires in the trailer were low, so I filled the tires up there, and that pushed me back in time, and it basically made me late for the delivery in Clearfield. But while I was there waiting in between, after dropping and then that load leaving, a new trainee / new driver, he was in the break room, and I was actually in there doing laundry, and so he had a question and asked me about the hours, because apparently his mentor hadn't explain to him how the clock works and all that. And so I tried to explain it to the best of my ability, because he was having questions on where you gain the time when you stop the clock, and what clocks do what kind of type of thing. And it, over time, just knowing how the clocks operate, I guess it becomes second nature. So for me to explain it to him, I guess it was enough, because I guess he felt comfortable with my answer. He didn't seem more confused. But I did my best explaining it to him. And for those of you out there, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of other people out there who explain the clocks, how they operate, and everything like that. But for those people that, if you're subscribed to me or whatever, or if you're a new person watching the video just randomly, who knows, but my best explanation of the 4 clocks, this is going to go all sorts of weirdness and off topic. There's the 4 clocks. You have your 8-hour drive clock, which tells you that after 8 hours of driving, you have to take a 30-minute break. At least a 30-minute break. You can take a longer break if you want, but at minimum it has to be a 30-minute break. And that clock will reset after not driving for 30 minutes. So you can be on duty doing whatever, fueling, maintenance, anything of the sort, trip planning paperwork, but it has to be 30 minutes of not driving minimum to reset the 8-hour clock. So when I drive, I like to drive and kind of break it up halfway sometimes. Sometimes I'll like to wait to at least 3 hours, because if you're not careful, if you take your 30-minute break too soon, you have to do 2 30-minute breaks in your 11-hour drive day. So if you take a 30-minute break before 3 hours of driving time have elapsed, you're going to have to take another 30-minute break. So that's what I like to do, is I like to drive at least 3 hours and then take a break. So then when I come back on the clock, I'll have an 8-hour window of driving, and that'll be my 11 hours for the day, if that makes sense. So I like to wait at least 3 hours to drive before I take a break, and usually I like to go about 4.5 to 5.5 hours, depending. Sometimes you're lucky in trip planning that you can go from one stop to another, depending on how you plan, where you won't have to take a 30-minute break and your trip is under 8 hours. But it depends on your trip planning, where your stops are. So that's the 8-hour / 30-minute break clock works. The next clock you have is the 11-hour drive clock. The 11-hour drive clock is how many hours you can drive in any given, actually you can do it in any given, was it 22 hours? Because you have to take a mandatory 10-hour reset. And this is not, we're not even going to get into split sleeper berths, because that's a whole different beast. But in a normal day, you can drive 11 hours and then you have to take a 10-hour mandatory reset. And theoretically, you can get right back up and drive another 11 hours. So, that's 22 plus 10. So in 32 hours, you can actually have 2 drive shifts of 11 hours. But, that's not including pre-trip, fueling, breaks, and things like that. So, in any given one day, and a day can be from noon today till noon tomorrow. It all depends on how your schedule is and everything. And driving reefer, there is no set day, an actual day. The sun gets up, sun sets, but if your day doesn't start till noon, then you have, and this gets with the 14-hour clock, because then if you start noon, I'll see if I can remember talking about it here in the 14-hour clock before I start diverting off to that. So back to the 11-hour clock. As soon as you start driving, whenever your tablet, whatever your system works for e-logs, once it starts going for driving time, well, actually, this goes back to the 14-hour, so I should have started with the 14-hour next instead of the 11. So the 11-hour clock, you can stop the 11. Anytime you stop, always stop your 11, your drive clock. We have the creep mode thing with this company, so when we get in the parking lots, things like that, as long as your speed stays below 5 miles an hour, you can put it in off duty, and it'll stop your 11-hour drive clock. And you kind of, I don't really have a problem with the 11-hour drive clock because I don't ever really run out of time with the 11-hour. It's always usually the 14-hour clock I'll run out of time with. But anyways, so your 11-hour drive clock is just, you can only drive 11 hours in any given 24-hour period of time because you have your 14-hour clock. So anyways, 11 hours, that's how much you can drive in one day. Stop it every time you at least with this company, anytime you go in the parking lot, you creep mode, shipper receiver type of thing, or at the yards or at the terminals, stop your clock, your 11-hour drive clock, and whatever. So that's just the 11-hour drive clock. It just says you can't drive more than 11 hours. Your 14-hour clock, that is your workday clock. You can't, well, you can stop that clock, but that goes into the whole split sleeper berth thing. And like I said, that's a whole different beast. So the 14-hour clock, once you start the 14-hour clock, you theoretically cannot stop it. So going back to what I was about to say was, if I started my day today at noon, I can only stay on the clock doing anything driving related in 14 hours. So I can go all the way until 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'd have to mandatorily not shut down, but I had to stop driving at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, I can still have 5 hours left on my 11-hour clock, but the 14-hour clock says I have to stop driving at the end of 14 hours. I cannot do any more driving or I am in violation. So your 14-hour clock is probably going to be the most important clock that you watch throughout the day. Like I said, once you hit 14 hours, don't be driving because you're in violation. So that goes back to what I was saying about, I started my 14-hour clock when I received that job that was meant for a different truck. And then once I noticed that, I went back to off duty, then I went back and we can edit our logs. And because of that, went in there and made the explanation, was given the wrong job. Hey, new job available. And okay, that looks better. And then Casper's Ice Cream, Richmond, Utah. Live load. Not California. Dadgummit. Anyways, so I was able to reset the 14-hour clock because I was able to go in there and edit that log entry and make it where it was just off duty time. So what else about the 14-hour clock? Now once you start the 14-hour clock, you can't stop it. And it goes by, if you're not, I can't say you're not careful, but there's been times where that 14-hour clock is like, it goes quick sometimes. You're like, holy crap, what happened to the time? So the whole trip planning thing and everything and all that good stuff, it helps because then you know how far you can drive. And helps you plan on where your stops are and things like that. So like for this job coming up, after I'm going to try and make this quick because my pickup time is at 1800 and it's 1337 now. And I gotta find out where Richmond, Utah is, and I'm sitting here in Brigham City, Utah at the Love's number 686. So that's the 14-hour, I guess, in a weird nutshell. Taking a break doesn't stop it. Like I said, you can't stop the 14-hour. Once it goes, it goes. The 70-hour clock is the next clock to watch out for. I mean, they're all clocks you need to watch out for, but the 14-hour is the first one, and then your 11-hour, and then depending on during the week and how the company that you work for, which setup they work on. We work on the 70-hour, 8-day rotation. So when you start getting close to that 70-hour time limit on your 70-hour clock, once that starts running out, then it starts getting really fun. The 70-hour clock can be stopped, but you have to be off duty for it to stop. And it'll stop every time you go off duty, and of course it stops every time you go on duty or you start driving. So that's how the 70-hour clock works. So when you take your 30-minute off-duty break, it stops. When you're doing your pre-trip and you actually do on-duty pre-trip, your 70-hour is rolling. Fueling, your 70-hour is rolling. So in my opinion, it really depends on how you want to protect your 70-hour clock. Because if you protect your 70-hour clock, when I say protect it, I mean if you're fueling, you're still off duty, your 70-hour isn't rolling, so you're protecting those hours so they're not ticking away. So that's what I consider protecting your 70-hour. So you're not I hope this is probably going to come back to me. But I don't do it anymore. I'm actually rolling my 70-hour. I'm not protecting it anymore. I'm actually at the point where I have 7 hours and 36 minutes left in my 70-hour right now. Tomorrow I gain back 5, and the following day I gain back 10. And those are your recap hours. So if you don't protect your hours, you end up like what I'm sitting at, where you run out of hours really quick on your 70-hour clock. So I can only do on-duty time for 7.5 hours today, and then I have to shut down because I'm out of time. So it's just like your 14-hour clock. Once your 70-hour clock runs out, you cannot do any driving. You can still do on-duty time and do whatever task you need to do, but then that actually counts. It goes into the negative and will actually take away from your recap hours that you would gain back. So for instance, if I went 2 hours over my 7.5 hours, it would actually take those 2 hours away from the recap hours I would get tomorrow. So instead of getting the 5 hours back tomorrow, I'd only get back 3 hours. So when it comes to the 70-hour, you really have to watch out. Dispatcher wants to know what time I could be there to load. So I'll have to do some planning. Squirrel. So the 70-hour, yeah, that's a tricky one too. So if you want to protect your 70-hour, you clock out for everything. Clock out for fueling, you clock out for paperwork, and when I say clock out, you go off duty. Because of our company, and actually I think FMCSA, you have to do at least a pre-trip, a minimum of 15 minutes, and of course I have to go on duty, pre-trip status, 15 minutes, and then go about my day. So I hope that if you had any questions about the clocks, if that answered any questions, and if not, you can always post the questions in the comments, and then I'll either respond to those questions or make another video. So guess that's going to be it for now. A little bit about the clocks and a summary of my pay. Ooh, corrosive. Yep, 1778. Still trying to find another employer. But yeah. All right then, you guys out there, you folks out there, stay warm, stay safe, and yeah, maybe it'll be another couple of weeks before I make another update. We'll see.